fish reporter at Politico based in Brussels. And right now we're going to discuss why are fisheries crucial to the socioeconomic fabric of European coastal communities. In this panel, we have 5 gentlemen here representing 5 different local communities in 5 different countries who are going to be impacted by Brexit. I have Mr. Erik Fluholm, the mayor of Leipzig in Denmark, Dr. Ulrich Getsch, mayor of Cuxhaven in Germany, Mr. Bart Nijart, member of parliament from the government of West Flanders province in Belgium, Mr. Jim O'Toole, the CEO of Ireland Seafood Development Agency, and Mr. Arjen Verkijk, alderman of Velsen municipality of the Netherlands. So if each of you could please introduce yourself and tell us how Brexit is going to impact your community specifically. Maybe if you can give us a little bit of, paint a picture for us about your community and what access to UK waters means to your community. And we're going to start with Mr. Fluholm.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to be here today. I'm proud on being here on behalf of the Danish local municipality and regions, and thank you for organizing this event and inviting me to also be a part of it and have it speak here today. As you said before, I'm the mayor of the municipality of Lemvig on the west coast of Denmark, and as you know, Denmark has water on over all the sites. We have 7,000 kilometers coastline. That means that we always have a lot of activities about fishing, big and small ports. Fishing is landed. We have been fishing in the Baltic Sea. We have been fishing in Kattegat, Skagerrak, and North Sea, and other areas in the North Atlantic, along with our colleagues from many countries, and of course also with the British fishermen. Far the most important area for Danish fishery is North Sea. About 2/3 of our turnover comes from there. If we look at the fishery in the British area, approximately 40% of our fish in volume come from there, and 30% of value come from this area. That makes Denmark one of the countries with the highest UK share. And that's also the reason why I'm here today, and why so many of my colleagues have signed the Brexit declaration. The declaration has been signed for 18 mayors by now, and I think we represent about 90% of the landing fish in Denmark. So we represent almost all the processing and trade service industry that's connected to the fishing sector in Denmark. So we are happy that we could share this opportunity here and be a part of this. When we look at the local area in Denmark, what does this mean? So we can say that our biggest fishing port in Thyborøn, where I'm also the mayor, we have about 100 top modern vessels. We have a lot of traditional fishing for human consumption, cod, plaice, haddock. We also have pelagic fishery, herring and mackerel, and we also have industrial species for fish meal and fish oil, such as sandal. We have a long tradition for going far away from fishing. Our vessels fish in Norwegian waters, UAE waters, and UK waters, if you can call it that. Because as speaker before me has told, there's a long, strong tradition to fish all over. Fish don't know a borderline, and fishermen have a long tradition for going out in the sea and for fish. Actually, we have fished for a generation in the UK water, and Danish fishermen also inspired the UK fisheries a long time ago. Our harbour has a turnover of approximately 120 million euro, 60% for human consumption and 40% of industrial species. So it means very much for our area and our local municipality. We have a lot of fishermen from Sweden, from Dutch, from Germany and from France who are landing fish in our area, and it created a lot of jobs. So we have about 400 fishermen in our harbour. I think we have over 1,000 activity employments directly on the harbour, and a lot of other jobs, divided jobs in the town. So therefore it's very important for us as a local municipality to look at the disaster it will be if we could not go on fishing in the UK water. There's a strong tradition for that, and it's very important that we keep also the negotiation, that we keep good access also to this water. We need to keep fishing right. We have earned through historic fishery. We need to continue access to British water, which we have had for 100 years. And we need to link the fishery Brexit agreement to other top priority areas, such as trade. That's very important for us. And if we look at the situation for the stocks, we can see that the fish stocks are in a good shape, good condition. And if we could keep on fishing on the stocks and also keep an agreement with the UK, I'm sure that this area of Europe also will continue to development in a good way. So I can guarantee we, as representing the Danish municipality, we will work for a good agreement, and we will keep on telling our politicians who shall be a part of the negotiation that we will keep on to fight for the rights. Personally, I will take also this opportunity to talk into the Committee of the Regions in Belgium, where I also represent the Danish municipality. So thank you for arranging this event here today, and thank you for being a part of it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Blufholm. And next, if Dr. Getsch, could you please paint us a picture about Cuxhaven and what is going on there?
Okay. The city of Cuxhaven has more than 50,000 inhabitants. We have partnerships with Villanova de Arosa here, fish employers, with Aveiro in Portugal, employers for fish, with Hafnarfjordur, Iceland, New Bedford, USA, fish. In the moment, in the best time in Cuxhaven, work more than 10,000 employers in fish industry. In the moment, more than 1,800. But the same is in Sassnitz, in the east of Germany, in the Rhön. More than 1,000 are working with fish. We are very hopefully. 2 new ships from Kutta Fish in the moment are built in Pontevedra. 2 new ships, Berlin and Cuxhaven, from Iceland, Sameri. And we think that the world goes on. England has an idea with the Brexit. Cuxhaven has more problems with the Brexit without fish. All cars from BMW, from Mercedes, go about Cuxhaven to England. When there's every day a ship roll on, roll off to England. And when we get the Brexit, many costs, time, and so on. It's very difficult for our town. Brexit, from a German perspective, at present about 60% of all pelagic catches of the German deep-sea fishing catches are made in the British economic zone. 60%. Under current regulation, more than 50% of the catch and 30% of German fisheries sales are fished in British territorial water. Particular problem is the situation of the German consumer favorite, the North Sea herring, which is exclusively caught in British territorial waters, with limited alternative options. 2 of the 4 pelagic trawlers currently operating would have to stop operations. This means the loss of 500 jobs for seafarer, land personnel and service sector. Closure of the Baltic Sea Fishing Processing Center in Sassnitz, this is Euro-Baltic, this means a loss of more than 1,000 workers at Euro-Baltic. This is a drastic scenario, can only be avoided if the following points are made in priority in the Brexit. What are the problems? First, traditional access rights of German fisheries to the waters of the United Kingdom shall not be restricted. Second, existing German fishing quotas in British water must be maintained in the long term. Third, the substantial management of the stocks in British waters must continue to be based on the recommendations of the International Council for the Exploration of the Sea. Fourth, the current possibility for exchanging fishing quotas with Great Britain must be maintained. 5. The European Union, and thus also as the German quota shares under third country agreements, Greenland, Norway, must not be reduced. We think when England say we want the Brexit, then it must go on with a full Brexit. No discussion about fish only. We think the program in all must be Brexit with cars, with fish, but all together, not fish only. That's the position.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And Mr. Nijart, please, if you could please paint us a picture about the situation in West Flanders and Belgium in general.
Well, we have a small country, as you know, and we are the only coastal province. I heard about 7,000 kilometers of coast. We have 67 kilometers of coast. But still, the impact is quite big. 50% of the catch and even more than 50% of the turnover of the fishery is linked to British waters. So there is a big impact if you look to the employment that is linked to fishery. Statistics are statistics, but we say that about 2,000 people are linked to what comes before fishery, the fishery itself, and the processing with fish and all that is around fishery. In whole, that could be 2,000 people. So if half of the turnover is threatened by this Brexit, that would be a big problem. And also, fishery in Belgium is also interesting for tourism. People like fishery and like the activity around fishery. And tourism in the 67 kilometers in Belgium is also very important. And there's a link, the stories of fishery, the eating of fish. So also that part of economy could be damaged by what happens when there is a Brexit. So for us, it is important. And we're very close to Brussels. So I suppose we do a Camino of 125 kilometers to Brussels out of from the coast of Belgium, of West Flanders then, to reach them. So for us, it's important, and the coastal cities have already signed the declarations, and we will have a press conference on Thursday with these cities in West Flanders to bring over the importance for us to the national government in Belgium.
Wonderful, thank you. And Mr. O'Toole, if you could please let us know more about the Irish situation.
Good afternoon and thank you. I represent the Irish Seafood Development Agency, BIM, and fisheries and seafood in Ireland is an important part of our economy. In 2016, the value of the seafood to our economy was valued at over €1 billion and has grown by about 7% in the last year. The seafood sector in its entirety supports some 11,000 jobs. 376 million euros worth of fish were landed at Irish ports from a fleet of about 2,000 vessels. And I think while the macro picture is important in terms of explaining the position of seafood and fisheries in the Irish economy, I think a couple of stories of particular ports emphasise the real impact of this sector that it has on local communities. If you take a port like Killybegs in Donegal, in the northwest of Ireland, it supports principally the pelagic fleet, 19 of the 23 pelagic vessels operate from there, but also there's a whitefish sector and a shellfish sector. In 2015, 177,000 tonnes of fish were landed into Killybegs. And a report was done by BIM some years ago analysing the impact of seafood from catching, processing, ancillary services, support industries. And that report concluded that 82% of the economic activity of that region was supported by seafood. And you must remember that Ireland is, of course, on the periphery of the continent, and Killybegs is on the periphery of Ireland. So the opportunities for alternatives are limited, and this is a resource that has developed and been supported over many years and become excellent at what it does. Another aspect of that, of course, is that for every euro that is spent in terms of value of catching fish, there's a further €2 support. So there's a huge multiplier effect that ripples right through the economy. And I think that's something that's important for that region, of course, but also has a wider impact. In the other Atlantic corner, if you like, of Ireland in the southwest, in Castletownbere, in 2015, the value of landings were 114 million euros. And that is primarily from our whitefish, and 2/3 of those landings are from non-Irish vessels. So I think, again, it's important that the collaboration that is evident here today in this initiative is that it not just because it affects it does affect, of course, our own communities, but there is also a knock-on effect that affects us across Europe, and that's why this event is so important. A further example would be our third and fourth largest ports in Dunmore East and Kilmore Quay in the southeast of the country are right proximate to the waters, the Celtic Sea that they fish in, is entirely in the UK EEZ. And again, you can imagine the impact that there is. And all the questions that we have in terms of access to water, the sustainable fishing, stability, the impact of having a greater number of vessels fishing if the worst case scenario materializes, all becomes very evident as the size of the threat. As I say, not just to the communities, but the multiplier effect that happens across the wider economy, and indeed has an impact on our European neighbours. So for these reasons, I think the importance of gathering here today and the importance of addressing this issue is very apparent.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Verkijk, if you could please let us know what's going on in the Netherlands and how this is going to impact the fleet and the communities surrounding those fleets.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank all people in the organization involved in the organization of this day, because it is a great day. Y también gracias, muchas gracias para la Junta de Galicia por la hospitalidad y de este día. I think, first of all, I like to introduce the municipality where I am from, because then you have an idea about where I'm talking about. Velzen is a city with 70,000 inhabitants, and IJmuiden is the port of Velzen with 35,000 inhabitants, so the half the municipality. IJmuiden is more or less known by the big steel plant of Tata Steel, which is on the coast line. However, IJmuiden wouldn't exist without the fishery. When 140 years ago the canal between Amsterdam and the North Sea was digged, the fishermen from the whole coastline from Scheveningen up to IJmuiden, who was a city at that moment, put their ships in the mouth of the canal. And there started an economy. The economy started growing. There came a fish auction, there came trade, and the people are living from the fishery. That is the start of IJmuiden. So the fishery is in the DNA of IJmuiden. That's also because my colleague Geert Pos, who has spoken for you in the first half, has the biggest fish auction in the Netherlands, and in our side is the second largest fish auction in the Netherlands. With the growth of the fishery sector in IJmuiden, also the economy arose. And a lot of families are involved in the fishery industry, and they expanded their activities. The entire chain of the fishing sector is in IJmuiden present. The capture, the landing, the storage, the trade, and the processing. And that is also why the negative effect of a wrong Brexit will affect the employment, because that is where we are sitting here, is influenced far more than we now think. And I won't use the word dramatic, because I'm an optimistic person, and I think we have to make our point today, and it will be picked up, but it will be have a dramatic influence. And it goes some further, because if the fishery is not anymore present in the harbor of IJmuiden, that's the most dramatic scenario, then the fishery also is paying partly for the investment in the harbor infrastructure. The question is, what will happen with the harbor on the long term if the profits from the fishery are not invested again in the harbor? And then we have the more bigger industrial sectors also present in our harbor. So I'm not very how do you call it in English? I know I'm not very happy with the Brexit discussion, because our fishery is mostly dependent on the UK fishing waters. If it is the pelagic fishery, they do the herring, well, Annerieke Vrolijk is present here, or it is the demersal fishing on the flatfishes. Most of them are all in UK waters, and so I don't think if the discussion in Europe is going the wrong way, the fishery will have a long life in the Netherlands, and the economy in the Netherlands started with fishery.
Well, thank you. So specifically, I'm wondering, so from a UK perspective, this is a bit of a tough question. When they tell you, why don't you go fish in somebody else's waters? What is your reaction to that? Like, what, for you as politicians and representatives of your countries and your communities, what do you say? What is your response to the government of the UK when they say such a thing about your fishing industries?
Don't forget your history.
First, fish is international. Vanderplaat, Netherlands. Euro-Baltic, Germany. Danish colleague Skagen, Kutterfish. And so we must go on all political, that we talk with them together to look for the problems. And what I mean is that they must hear everybody, it's the same way we go. We go one way and not 5 or 6 or 8 ways of the Brexit.
And I think also it's give and take. If you negotiate a Brexit, it's not only about the fishery waters of the British people, but it's also about trade between the EU and the UK on fishery products. So I think that's also something in the negotiation that has to be taken into account. But first thing is indeed history, solidarity, and there has always been fished in the waters of Brittany, and I guess the British are also fishing in some parts of the waters of our countries. although that is smaller. We have treaties going back to the 15th century of the city of Bruges and Britain talking about all kind of things, but also about fishery and the rights to go to fish in the waters of Britain.
They don't have to forget that they have to sell their fish in the rest of Europe, so we can also make a blockade.
I think it's important that we that hardline approach is one that obviously we would find unacceptable. But that what I think is important about this initiative is that this debate is considered in the context of all the trade that is being done as part of the Brexit negotiations, so that the particular instance of fisheries can't be isolated from the general trade, because if we were, it would be probably a bad deal all round if both sides were cherry picking particular industries, and I don't think that's the approach that our Michel Barnier and our governments are negotiating towards.
I think it's very important to discuss also the history and also the stability, the historical stability, because if the UK could made a hard Brexit, should they build up a processing, fabrics, new vessels, and what about the rest of Europe? So I agree in what you said before. It's very important that the fishery is not alone a discussion. It's a part of the whole package we have to discuss. So the relative stability is very important when we discuss that. It can't be going back to all the rights for the UK fishermen, because as we were talking about before, the history tells that also Danish fisheries inspired Englishmen a new way of fishery. So there's a long tradition for sharing the quotas. So you can't just take all the quotas out of this system, and if you give one country this right, it will be a disaster for the cooperation in Europe. You will see a lot of others. Country will discuss, region discuss going out of, if we can benefit but not share what the original activity was.
And so sort of building upon this discussion, we have the issue of shared stocks. The EU and the UK share about 100 shared stocks. How would you envision, each of you, what would be your ideal scenario to managing these stocks sustainably and in a fair way to ensure that everyone can have their equal share of the quota?
Well, you have a political problem in the UK. That is that they promise their fishermen that they will get an explosion of to catch fish, and you have to take care for that, because when you say, well, leave it like this, make and handle the trade treatment, then everything will keep the same. Then what is the sense of the UK for getting out of the EU? So the question is where the discussion will hurt, because whatever changes are made, it will hurt the UK at most. And well, I don't know the answer on this discussion, but you cannot have a situation that we give partly our quota back. We are not anymore allowed to fish in the British water. And if you start discussing about the volumes, then you know where the discussion will end. It will be a hard discussion, because it's all of nothing. And, well, I don't know the answer. I only see the problems. Sorry.
Sorry.
I think one of the issues that has to be addressed is approaching this in the sense that it is a zero-sum game, and that the a gain for one side is a loss for another. I think that approach, what we have to bear in mind is that the EU have operated for a long time on a common approach, and one that has been negotiated, and the stability of the fisheries is also taken into consideration. So I think it's important that the negotiation is seen in something that has a longer term, where there is as much benefit as possible for all the people that are involved.
And for me, it's very important to stay here and go and give a message to Germany. We stand together with fish problems and Brexit. And we don't want to talk about automobile industries, many employers, fish very small, no problem. No, I think the message to the German, but in the EU, we stay here with fish together with these countries.
And speaking of please go ahead, Mr. Fluhom.
In Connect, you asked what the ideal process would be. I think we must take from the history, right? We must discuss out from the stability today. So if we have to give something, we have to discuss what is that the priority in connection with. You can't just take all the quotas and give them to the UK fishermen and start a new discussion. So we have to take the discussion from where we are today and not where we could have been 100 years ago. We have to discuss it from today. Our industry and our fishermen have built on the quota system we have today. So if the UK want to stay out of this, we have to have a linked agreement with them, which are linked to all the other parts of trade we want to have with UK afterwards.
And speaking of the common approach, the common fisheries policy is not exactly the most popular topic among fishermen, as we can all agree. And the UK was was a champion of a lot of very strong, we could say, pro-environmental reforms when the common fisheries policy was reformed 2013-2014. And I'm wondering, as countries that will still be subject to the common fisheries policy and communities that are still subject to the common fisheries policies, and now we have the landing obligation coming in and the development of the North Sea multi-annual plan, I'm wondering from your perspective, how does it feel for you when you hear the criticisms from the UK about the European system that everyone has had to contend with so far?
I don't get totally your question, because is it a discussion about the way Europe is making rules for our fishery and how England is reacting on that?
Yes.
After the Brexit?
Yes. So talking about solidarity, you guys are here together, 5 countries on the stage, representing 5 different situations, but all united because of the impact it's going to have on your coastal communities. And so when the EU is all about this idea of collaboration and working together and solidarity. So I'm wondering, as Europeans, from a European perspective, and talking about fisheries policy, when you hear such strong criticism and total rejection of the common fisheries policy, which has been negotiated with all of the countries' consent, for you, how does that make you, what do you think about that? What does it make you feel as a politician or as a European or as someone from your country, from your community, when you see the impacts that this legislation is having on your communities, and then to have it so profoundly criticized?
Of course, UK, you have policy and environmental policy and quite strict environmental points of view. But then you have Brexit, which was funded on an opposed point of view, I guess. So there's not one point of view. It's the point of view that was against European politics that won the Brexit, and it's the pro-European point of view that influenced the whole legislation and regulation on fishery. So how can you talk now to the UK government about their point of view in the past, when now they have to kind of defend that there is no solidarity? I don't know if they will defend that there are things that point in that direction, that there will be no kind of solidarity anymore. But I guess you have to point them out that in the past they have been talking about indeed solidarity, and that you have to do it in a sustainable way, and that for that we have to think about the quota and the division of the quota and the allowable catch and so on. So if they want to continue on that thing, they should be consequent now. And even if they are not in the EU, they should still think about sustainability and what is good for the fishery in the future?
I think the criticisms that might have been levelled by the UK have to be taken in the context that, of course, as countries, we will compete with one another. But there is a recognition that has been evident for such a long time now that despite what might be perceived as shortcomings, the common approach has been beneficial to EU fisheries, and also, as we've seen from the examples given around the table, to the coastal communities that are there. So that approach is one that there's a lot of evidence that it has worked. Of course, every time you go into a negotiation, you want to try and get a better deal. That's the nature of negotiation. But fundamental understanding is that the common approach has been beneficial for the common resource.
And so moving on towards more of a community impact of Brexit, I'm wondering if some of you could give some concrete examples of how Brexit will impact the broader supply chain. One thing I know is that a lot of women, for example, work in processing. We also have the retail sector, we have exporters, we have importers. How in your communities are we going to see the whole value chain of fisheries, from the fisherman catching the boat to the consumer buying it in the supermarket, going to impact your communities?
Well, I think I gave an example earlier of the port of Killybegs, where a study showed that 82% of the economic activity in the area was derived from fishing, from further processing, ancillary industries, which goes to net making, engineering, boat building, maintenance, fuel supply, catering, refrigeration. The ripples keep going out. I mentioned also Castletown Bear is another port in the southwest of Ireland, where 54% of the economic activity from that region is derived from fishing specifically. And then if you add in aquaculture, which is strong in that area as well, you get up to a figure of 86%. And these communities, as I said, are peripheral and they're isolated, and therefore the alternatives are few. So this multiplier effect is something that I mentioned that I think is really important. That there is a formula there that can be derived as to what the impact is for those communities.
It's in Germany the same.
But it's obvious in our area, in our municipality, there was a multiplier effect also, as you told in your area. I think we talk about 5 or 6 people are working in land for one fisherman, and therefore we have a lot of activity. We can see it as a good stocks, a lot of fish are landed. We can see it on activity on land. Processing industries are growing. All the services industries are growing, and also the detail activities. So there's money spent on other activities. So it's an economic driver for areas like ours. So it's very important. And you look all over Europe, you'll see that a lot of those activities are not inside big cities. It's also, as you talk about, it's a discussion also about wilderness outside the big cities. How do we create a Europe grow outside big cities? This is a situation here where we are attacking if a hard Brexit will result in lower quotas for our fishermen. It will mean that our fishermen from all over Europe is not landing in our ports, and our own fishermen are not landing the fish. And they will move to other areas, and that will change the situation, economical, dramatic. So, of course, it created a lot of jobs on the west coast of Denmark, where we live, and it's important to keep, as I said before, the stability, so we have access to the UK water also after Brexit. You can't just stop discussing this quota, so it must be a part of the whole package.
There is another influence I didn't mention in my introduction. That is, if a substantial part of the food supply in Europe is skipped because there is a lack of fish, how do we fill in that gap? And that is something, also with the environmental issues, you have also to think about that.
And so I'm wondering, a lot of these coastal communities in Europe, fishing is part of a broader identity. We call it part of the social fabric. So I'm wondering, what in your communities, what does it mean to be a fisherman traditionally, and what does it mean to be a fisherman today, and how is that connected to the broader social fabric of your cities?
Well, I think the fishery has changed, of course, and that's nice because if you are standing still, then you are going back. But what you see is that the fishery industry also subsidize our sports clubs and our culture clubs, and because they are more or less the most are family-based firms with a very social behavior, and it will cost the community not only the unemployment but also some additional things that come out of the fishery sector.
I think the tradition for fishing is a part of our identity. I'm out of a fishing tradition. My father was a fisher, and a lot of my family were fisher. And in our municipality, we have the only school in Denmark with educated young fishermen. So they come through our area. So it's part of our identity, and the activity in our area is grounded on fishery. Our ports is built on fishery. We try to get other activity in. One of the biggest offshore harbor in Denmark, Esbjerg, was one of the biggest fishing harbor some years ago. So the baseline in the harbor, and a lot of those harbor we talk about, is fishery, and other activities come out from this. Also, the local companies who services the fishing industry, they build up new jobs in offshore and other service arrangements. So it's a part of our identity, and it's where it's all started. So I think all the west coast of Denmark have a part of a fishing tradition inside, and also the way of living. So it's important for
I think that's the same. Look to Denmark, Wiedesande, Skagen, Hirtshals, Cuxhaven, Sassnitz, Bremerhaven, all towns, and this area is with fish traditional. It's very, very difficult to find other employer for work. When you say offshore, we have more than 1,800 only in Cuxhaven are working in fish. Siemens has built a new plan in Cuxhaven. When it's completely, then nearly 1,000 employers. We have more families with fish as in the other industries in our area.
I think I've mentioned before the importance and I suppose the relatively few alternatives there are in the principal fishing ports in Ireland. That's fishing and seafood industry defines those communities in terms of the catching sector, but also the processing and the ancillary industries that spring up around that. It's true to say that the heart of those communities is derived from fishing and from seafood.
But I mentioned tourism because you talk about identity, and that's true, but identity is also story, and story is also marketing, and people come to the sea, come to cities at the sea because of the fishery. That's part of the story of these cities, and gastronomy that comes with it also. So So if you have to tell them, well, there's no fishery anymore here, you get a different story at your coastal cities, and you get also the gastronomy and the restaurants, and we have lots of them in Belgium. And they like to work with the North Sea fish, and it gives, on the national TV, it gives very good promotion for the coastal cities. So also that part is very important for the coastal
Fishery is huge.
Yeah, yeah. It's, we have a new film now about a fishery family in Flanders. If you tell something about fishery, it's on TV.
Important point that it's something, initiative that we have worked on in Ireland, is that linkage between tourism and seafood. There's a tourist trail along the west coast of Ireland called the Wild Atlantic Way, and in recent years we have been working with our tourism industry to develop what we call the Taste of the Atlantic, and that's linking the producers, the product and the place, so that for tourists and also for the local community, that there's a connection built there between seafood and the people that produce it and the place where it comes from. And local provenance is a very strong factor in terms of people being attracted to all products, but to seafood in particular.
So in Cuxhaven the same, we have more than 3,700,000 overnights with tourism. I don't know how many people come only for fish eating, I don't know, but when they go home, they take fish with them, and the most people come from Nordrhein-Westfalen, they have no coast.
I think it's also important to take a share in between tourism and local identity, and also what are fishermen today. In our municipality, in our harbour, they are starting to make small films about fishery, go out and sea with them, and show how they handle foodware on the sea. Actually tell a story that we don't tell a story 40 or 50 years ago, so you have a picture of how is fishing today, but tell the right story of this big activity go on today, how we handle fish, and how we work sustainability into the quota, and how we work an activity on the ships to keep a high quality, how we sell it on Tila auction, day-to-day auction to all over Europe from the system, from the harbour in Tiburon. It's a good story to tell that it's a fresh fish to all over Europe, and that's what our fishermen delivered. It's not only history. They come as guests and also at the west coast of Denmark, and they want to buy fresh fish. But the industry, we have to talk that up too, and also tell the story about why are this a good activity also for our part of Europe.
So now I'd like to ask the audience if there are any questions. Yes, sir. We just 1 second, sir. We have a microphone there for you. If you could please introduce yourself just as well. Thank you.
My name is Bond. Ja, Bond. I'm Vice Governor of the province of North Holland, and I have a question. Perhaps if the answer is no, it is a suggestion. The strange thing is that the Brexit wants something which was there before the European Union was there. The fishery grounds has always been for everyone could fish there, and the British could fish in our waters. So the strange thing is that because of the Brexit, there will be a discussion which wasn't there before the European Union was here. Did we ask the British fishermen to join us? Because they also have a benefit. They also have a very big value in their export, but also the balance, which is not only in the fishery itself, but in the chain of the logistics and the food chain. So did we ask the British to join us, the British fishermen? And if the answer is no, perhaps it's a suggestion to do so, because now it will be something the British will use in negotiations, and they will capitalize it. So the question which comes around the corner is how much money does the European Union want to pay to keep the fishing industry? But I think we didn't ask the British fishermen to join us because they also have a lot of arguments to join us. It's a little bit out of the box, but
Can someone answer that? Gerard, maybe you might be the best.
Yeah, James Bond always asks very difficult questions. No, but the British fishermen, they want, apparently most of them, more quota and play the excess thing. The other part of the fishing industry, which is the buyers, the traders, the processors, they depend a lot on import of fish, very much so. And until now, you don't really hear a lot of them. They have a much more nuanced view on this, but maybe time is not ripe yet that these, let's say, the other part of the total seafood chain in the UK is willing to speak up a little bit. Well, I don't know, it's my guess that until now they don't want to offend, so to say, the ambition of the fishermen, of the catching sector, possibly, but when, that's what I hope, of course, when time comes a little bit further and really the impact and the Brexit or the no deal type of thinking continues, I hope that they will speak up because that part of the seafood sector has a huge amount to lose. And if you talk to them internally, so not in public, they say so. But in public you don't hear that very much, not yet.
But they also have a lot to lose because they don't have the capacity and the knowledge for certain kinds of fishery. So I don't understand that they want something that they don't have at this point. So that is what you have to capitalize in money. That will be a part of the negotiations. But what I don't understand is that they want something they can't handle.
I'm not entirely sure. But they cannot handle, I mean, if they really would get much part of the cake, bigger than now, it will for some time, for them, totally impossible to take it all. But that may be just a matter of time. I mean, there are many entrepreneurs around everywhere, also outside the UK, who are willing to help the Englishmen with this, I think. So it's really about the equilibrium. All the people said it's the balance which we should strive for. And to be honest, the fishermen in the UK should come down the mountain a little bit. They've been seeing this expectation for 2 years building up by everybody. And, well, it's more management of expectations, to be honest, partly, that they have to do themselves. And we also a little bit. Huh?
Any other questions? There we go. Pim.
Thank you very much. And my name is Pim Visser, representing part of the demersal industry in the Netherlands. And I think this is key that we have this meeting today, that the total value chain is there and that we stick together. And I really want to stress what Geert Post said, that this is the beginning of something, because there's many, many more things. We're now talking about Brexit, but there's the North Sea plan, which is currently being discussed between the European Parliament and the Commission. And if the line of thinking of the Parliament goes ahead, this will be a total and utter disaster for all of our industries. So we need to put pressure on our governments for that. And there's the infamous landing obligation, which coincides with Brexit. And what will happen if what the Scottish minister has said, that he will not keep his boats in port for the landings obligations, and we as the EU 27 will have to do that in 2019. Then there is an interesting situation. So what are your views on the alignment of the thinking of the EU and the Great Britain after 2019, if there is no level playing field in the North Sea? Shall we have a talking relationship with the EU? Shall we go our own way? What will our relation with the EU will be? After divorces, you see two possibilities. They either stay together as the best of friends, and that's the best thing for the children, or they fight, and then the children are the victims. So how do we strive for the best situation? That's my question.
Thank you.
Maybe maybe for the next neighbor island. That's the most challenging.
Okay, the spotlight's there. Obviously, the best solution is one where there is some sort of the two divorced parties continue to talk for the better interest. I think it's just too early to say at this point. We can't really speculate on how those negotiations are going to pan out, what the relationship is going to be like. But we are going to have to, at some point, try and collaborate, because otherwise we will, instead of trying to catch fish, be stuck in legal battles that aren't going to be productive or good for the communities that we represent.
Well, to be honest, I think the one who is asking the question knows the answer the best, because in the Netherlands we are now lucky that the national government was chosen some months ago. It looks like the Belgium situation, but we now have a new government, and in the government declaration, the Brexit discussion for the fishery is pointed out with take it seriously also in Europe. I think that a hard Brexit discussion is bad for the fishery, so you should also have the government who are going to a soft Brexit, and they will change something, because in the position of England they have to get something out of it, otherwise they have only rumours in their country. But maybe it's good that we are now here united. That's a big thing to have the example of Netherlands, that all the other governments also speak it out, because we have to be aware that the countries now present here is not the majority of the member states in the European Union. And there we have to make clear that the influence of a hard Brexit for the fishery influence all sectors in Europe. Also the one who don't have a fishing sector.
Javier.
Hello, my name is Javier Garat. I represent the Spanish Fishing Confederation. Do you think that your central governments are taking seriously this issue related to fisheries and Brexit?
In Germany, they don't talk about this problem. Only the fishermen with the politique with fish. Nobody says the fish problem must discussion together or so. No, only the towns from Cuxhaven, Bremerhaven, Sassnitz, Deutsche Fischereiverband, they say it. And it's very difficult. Very difficult.
I think the proximity of our country to the UK, Brexit is the subject of constant conversation. I had the occasion last week of meeting with our Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine, and he said at this stage he times in the day when how long it has before the conversation turns to Brexit. So I think our government is very focused on this issue. Obviously the land border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland is a big issue, and the importance of the marine is something that is concentrating the minds of our government.
In Denmark, we have also a discussion about it, and I think our government is also concerned about it. But as you said before, there's a lot of countries who have to discuss this in EU, and we have to talk about it all the places where we get an opportunity. So it's also important, as you said before up here, that this is just a start of. We have to know where are our friends in this discussion. When our member of parliament works for an agreement or a soft Brexit, or what we should call it, where are their friends? Some of the countries in Euro have no interest in this, and therefore it's important to talk about it anytime. So our minister is aware of the big interest for Denmark in the UK water, and we name it for them anytime we get a chance. So we have to bring it anytime we got an opportunity, but we have to help each other all over Europe. So it must be a part of the total plan.
I think we have the ear of the national government, but the same situation as in the EU. It's the importance of fishery and the importance of other things that are negotiable in the Brexit. So the most important thing is what we do now, stress the importance of the fishery, and we have to do it in our country, we have to do it in the EU, and keep repeating it. We have the ear, we can have the ear of the EU, but negotiations are negotiations, so you have to continue stressing it.
Yeah.
Don't be exchange money for something else. But in the end, everything is exchange money in negotiations.
Yeah. Fair philosophical.
Okay, on a une question qui vient de notre représentant de la France. So we have a question coming from the French representative here today.
Moi,
Vous pouvez parler en français, je vais traduire, c'est pas grave.
merci, merci. Je parle pas anglais.
Non, mais
je
c'est
fais
pas
de la
grave.
résistance, je n'apprendrai jamais l'anglais.
D'accord, c'est pas grave. Vous êtes le bienvenu ici aussi.
Merci. Ce que je veux dire, cette réunion aujourd'hui est très importante pour donner un signe fort à nos politiques respectifs, nos hommes politiques, ou nos femmes politiques aussi, à Bruxelles. L'unité. Nous sommes les 9 États membres qui avons des façades maritimes sur les 27. Les Anglais vont essayer de nous disloquer, de défaire comme ils ont l'habitude de faire, parce qu'ils se croient les patrons de la mer.
So just let me translate that because it's going to be longer than I thought. Si vous pouvez répéter encore une fois, et comme ça je vais traduire petit à petit, comme ça, voilà.
Ouais, je disais qu'il est très important aujourd'hui
It's very important today
à Saint-Jacques-de-Compostelle, qui est un lieu
at
pieux,
Santiago de Compostela
de montrer l'unité
to show unity
des 9 États membres que nous représentons.
of the 9 member states that we represent.
Passer un message fort aux politiques
This is a strong message to the politicians
et à l'unité de l'Europe.
and of the unity of Europe.
Parce que je crois que l'Europe a d'autres préoccupations avec d'autres gens qui revendiquent d'autres choses.
Because I think Europe is worried about other people other things that are being revindicated by other people.
Donc je dis que le Brexit est peut-être une chance de renégocier l'Europe
Brexit could be a chance to renegotiate Europe
pour les pêcheurs,
for the
pour
fishermen,
les transformations
for the transformation and processing sector,
et pour l'unité socio et culturelle que nous représentons.
and for the socio-cultural unity that we represent.
Donc, sans être trop long,
Without
la
being too
France,
long,
le gouvernement actuel
in France, the current government
a nommé un monsieur Brexit
has nominated a Brexit minister.
au Comité national des pêches. Nous avons nommé
Brexit-
une Madame Brexit.
J'ai- a
Et
okay, representative of Brexit, okay.
au Comité national, j'ai demandé aux 14 régions de France et de mienne
Okay,
Des
okay.
hommes.
He asked the 14 regions of France at the Comité régional
des pêches et des élevages
of
marins.
of fish and sorry, I can't. Fish farming.
farming.
Perfect. Yes.
Pourquoi je mets ici les dômes que nous amenons, nous, dans la corbeille de la mariée?
Why should what like? Yeah, the dowry. But why?
La
Pardon?
Réunion, l'île de la Réunion,
Yes. The outermost regions of France. Why should we bring this as the dowry of in the debate? Okay.
c'est l'ouverture de l'Europe
It's the openness of Europe.
face à l'Inde, la Chine, l'Australie et l'Amérique.
So it's basically Europe the openness of Europe vis-à-vis China, India, and the United States.
Ce n'est pas hors sujet du Brexit parce que c'est l'ouverture du marché,
It's not only Brexit, because
l'ouverture
it's also the openness of the market,
de ce marché européen,
of this European market,
parce que les Anglais sont en train de vendre du crabe en Chine.
because the English are selling crab to China.
L'Europe offre un marché de 550 millions de consommateurs,
Europe has a market of 500 million consumers.
donc il faut toucher où ça fait mal, c'est-à-dire au portefeuille.
We have to hit them where it hurts, which then that means the wallet.
That was clear.
Anyways, pretty much. Okay, would someone like to reply?
Well, it's more or less a statement. I think
Yes.
all we agree in that point.
Wonderful. Would anyone else like to say anything? No. That's okay. So, can we have one more question from Sean? Okay, last question from Sean.
Sean O'Donoghue, the Killybegs Fishermen's Organisation in Ireland. I just want to ask the panel about given that we have got very hard statements from the UK, particularly the fishing industry, do they see that fisheries in the end of the day will be expendable here in terms of giving away access and fishing rights to satisfy a UK appetite on certain other and EU fronts as such? And secondly, does it do they consider that transitional arrangements are going to be necessary, particularly in relation to fisheries? Thank you.
I think the efforts that has gone into having this conference today and the collaboration between the representatives here signifies our intent that fisheries doesn't become expendable, and I think that's what we have to strive for. So I think we have to work very hard together to make sure that that doesn't happen, because as we've all outlined, the importance that it has to regional economies is too big a price to pay.
Ivan? Okay.
My name is Ivan Lopez.
Yeah.
I'm a local and also represent Cepesca in EUFA. I'm aware that we are at the end, so just to close, fisheries is certainly not expendable. You are mostly representatives of communities or local administrations. I suppose one very European thing to do is when governments or bigger authorities take away something from a local community, especially a coastal community, and they say, don't worry, other industries will come and, you know, employment will get back to where it was and everything will be much better. But we also know that very often that is not the case. So do you think that if the worst case scenario goes through, or one of the worst case scenarios goes through, is there any way or any money that can bring the impact of the fisheries, the worth of fisheries to the local communities back on? Meaning, how much would it cost the European Union to rebuild those communities? I'm not asking for a figure, I'm just asking for a qualitative, because I think that it's also important to send a message to the European Union and their institutions that it's not only the fight now, it's the fight of what happens afterwards. And if they don't fight this fight now, if they don't really defend fisheries, well, they will have a much bigger problem than defending fisheries once Brexit has taken place and there is no longer so much fisheries and impacting all the coast. It's just something that is half decent, reasonable to think. Thank you.
Yeah.
totally agree with you. There's a lot of areas where fishery is a driving sector, harbor is a driving sector, and the activities, economic activities, is based on this activity. So you can't change, you can't put money on what is the price for a lot of port on the west coast of Denmark will change. If there's no fishery, we have to go into other part of industry, but nothing can take place in that, so you can't put money. It would be a big disaster for a lot of those fishing ports all around the North Sea if we have a hard Brexit. So we have to fight for a good Brexit that can keep the relatively stability, so our fishermen and our industries have to continue the production.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Sorry, we don't have time for any more questions, but I'd really encourage you all to speak to the panelists afterwards. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen, and thank you for staying. And now I'm going to pass it over to Gerard, who's going to close everything. So thank you very much.